Alright guys, returning with a weekend reaction after, what was a long holiday and even longer week. So yeah, catching up with all the weekend's action, obviously late to the party, but I'll give my take on all the sort of fights. I've noted them down on my phone, so just gonna, run through them briefly and discuss all of them in some detail and analyze where each person will go and that sort of stuff. So obviously you have the main sort of fights: Garcia versus Broner, Jarrell Miller versus Gerald Washington. Then you have some other sort of other fights on the undercard: Jamal Charlo versus Jorge Sebastian Highland as a WBC eliminator, sorry, for the mandatory spot at middleweight, and Victor Ortiz also fought. Katie Taylor fought over in the States, and there's some other news in regards to, you know, Mayweather McGregor, some of the undercard, and Dillian White on the Crawford Indongo undercard. So, gonna discuss the fights and obviously one by one. Then I'm gonna discuss the small bit of news that there is as well, and yeah, we'll go from there. Probably be a longer video than normal. Hoping the audio quality is actually better because I've got a speaker, or sorry, a microphone. So yeah, hopefully it is substantially better. I'm hoping it works. But yeah, let's go for Garcia versus Broner. Adrian the Problem Broner came in very light at 138 for this super lightweight or light welterweight contest. Garcia came in slightly heavier, but within the limit, and at 139 point something, can't remember the exact sort of a weight, but the fight, in some ways it panned out how I thought it might pan out. In some other ways it didn't pan out how I thought it panned out. Did think Adrian Broner was very low volume. What I will say is I did think he was weight drained. I saw him at I saw the weigh-in on Friday, and I thought he looked very bare. Normally he's a very muscular guy. When he gets down into shape, he does look big and ripped. In terms of, especially from the shoulders, I think he looks hulking from the shoulders at 140. At 147, he does look a bit slow. But yeah, that's my kind of take on that. He looked very dry at the weight, and I don't think he really had the energy to go in all the late rounds. But maybe that contributed to the overall sort of picture that was Garcia just taking over, being very, very dominant, very methodical, wasting little energy, picking his shots very well. His punch selection was fantastic. Mikey Garcia is a real force. I was skeptical when he came back. I really was. I thought, Mikey in his prime, obviously, well, young prime, I guess, he was very, very, athletic, and he did everything fantastically. I was wondering if he would be able to do that again, and he's actually gone on to surpass that with a brutal knockout of Dejan Zlatikanin and a domination job on Adrian the Problem Broner. So, two very good names on his record as well. I know Zlatikanin's not really known to the casual market, but definitely the hardcores would know who he is. A pretty decent fighter, done a good job on Ricky Burns over here when he was expected to lose. And, he's done a real good job on, a very decent operator in Adrian Broner at some level. Obviously a 4-weight world champion, so, Mikey Garcia and that win can't go amiss. You gotta have some sort of respect for it, and you gotta rate it in some quarters. So yeah, that's my kind of opinion on that. I know Garcia is talking about staying at 140, maybe moving down to 135, maybe even 147. I know there was an article on Boxing Scene today, and he said he's open to discussions with Keith Thurman. And Garcia is very talented, don't get me wrong, but sooner or later the weight has to catch up with him. He did look like slightly smaller man than Broner. I thought they were comparable in size, but slightly smaller. And, a bigger guy can take his shots. He definitely has power, Adrian Broner. Sorry, Mikey Garcia. But Adrian Broner took his power, and Adrian Broner has a reliable chin. I wouldn't say Thurman has a chin of Broner, but he definitely cuts a lot of weight to make 147, and maybe that's a reason to his punch resistance. But I do think he can. I do think he could fight at 147 given the right opponent. Let's put it that way. We won't talk about punch resistance and that sort of stuff. I mean, Mikey, if he gets the right opponent, he'd be okay at 147. And it's similar to how Roy Jones Jr. fought John Ruiz at heavyweight. You have to have the right opponent when you're moving up. One or two natural weight classes. Can't have a there are anomalies. I know maybe Leo Santa Cruz and Carl Frampton the first fight. Carl Frampton obviously moved up from super bantam. He only moved up one weight class, and he done a fairly decent job on Leo Santa Cruz in that first encounter. But as I said, there are, most of the time when you're jumping up two weight classes, you do tend to need the right dancing partner, and I think Keith Thurman isn't one to jump right in. Jump right in for Mikey Garcia. I think Mikey Garcia maybe needs maybe a Jeff Horn, someone like that. I think Jeff Horn is very beatable, and I think he could do a decent number on Jeff Horn. But again, Jeff Horn is relentless, so it just depends how Mikey copes, I guess, with a different style. I think he's faced pretty much every style, so yeah, I am a big fan of Mikey. I've been a big fan prior to him coming back. I just was skeptical as to how he would come back, if he would come back to his old self, and it seems to me that he's actually improved. So yeah, well done to Mikey. Where does Broner go from here? Very tough to say. He's still very young. He's only lost 3 fights, but seems that his career is in the middle of a crossroad where he's losing to sort of the elite of the division, but the other guys he's kind of beating, and he's not really he hasn't really got a version of the world title, but he's making a lot of money. So it's a bit of a catch-22 for him, I guess. If he's making money and he's happy making the money he's making, because let's not get it wrong, he's making a hell of a lot of money, then fair dues to him. But if he's looking for more glory, then it's going to be tough, because 147 is stacked. 140, obviously, Crawford and Dongo fighting for all of the belts. So if one does move up, if they are going to move up in the aftermath of August 19th, then maybe 1 or 2 belts could become vacant, and he could fight the next top-rated contender in those rankings. But difficult to say for Adrian Broner. I think he needs to step away, reassess, and I know he's only 27, but it's tough to teach an old dog new tricks. I know that's the cliche, but he really needs to work on his footwork and throwing more punches. He's very inactive in fights, and his footwork really lets him down. I think he has really, really good hand speed and decent power, but as I said, it's difficult to teach an old dog new tricks. So I guess we'll wait and see where Broner goes from here. But it's looking a bit iffy for Adrian at the moment. Charlo versus Highland was on the undercard, if I'm correct, or it was on one of the undercards, and yeah, I wouldn't say a decent fight, because it wasn't. Highland seemed to have a knee injury going into the fight. I know it was heavily taped, so we didn't really get to see the best of Highland. We saw Sebastian Highland over here in the UK. He done a real good job on Matthew Macklin when it was a WBC eliminator for the mandatory spot, and he's been mandatory since then. That's about 2 years now. So bit of a shame for him. But although he should be pulling out of the fight if he has an injury to that extent, he's a rugged, come forward sort of guy. But I always thought Charlo, even at Highland's best, Charlo would be a bit too much. I think he's a real force. I really rate his style. He's got a decent jab. He's got decent fundamentals. Not the best, but decent fundamentals. and he's got a hell of a lot of power, it seems. So, he's a force for anyone. I think at 154 he was a real force. He done a real good job against what was his name, J-Rock, Julian Williams, and I thought that was a really good win, dominant win. He had a good win against Austin Trout, and one of his other defenses, it was against a lesser known sort of body, but he looked okay, I guess. But those two performances really catapulted him at 154. Now at 160 he looks to be a real force, and I think he can make some waves in the division. Whether or not he's maybe already a top 10 guy is is difficult to say. People will make their mind up with that, but he's mandatory for Golovkin or Canelo, whoever wins the WBC belt. I think if Canelo wins, it'll probably go vacant because he's not fighting for that version of the world title since he has a bit of a feud with the WBC. So yeah, it might stay with Golovkin. I'm not sure, but he's basically the mandatory. So best of luck to him, and yeah, I think he can do a real number on some of the guys in the division. Him versus maybe a David Lemieux, him versus Curtis Stevens. I think would all be good fights, and they're all big punches, those three especially. So we'll also see how Billy Joe gets on with Willie Monroe Jr. as well. That might be a potential opponent. I know he's a mandatory in WBC, but sometimes things don't go to plan. Just look at Callum Smith in the World Boxing Super Series. So we'll see how things go. Charlo, one to keep an eye out at 160 for sure. Miller versus Washington, standard sort of brawler versus boxer, but here the boxer was overwhelmed. Jarrell Miller is an absolutely huge man. He's massive, and pardon my French, fucking hell, he's a tank of a man. Let's put it that way. Yeah, so I mean, Jarrell Miller, yeah, first round, he kind of sussed out Washington. What was he about? Washington obviously trying to, throw out the jab with, I wouldn't say he threw it out in the fight, I guess, with success at times, but he was really struggling with it, and he didn't throw it enough as it is. He wasn't really a deterrent. It was kind of just he was throwing out the jab for the sake of it, and disappointing for Washington, to be honest. He can be a decent boxer when he needs to be, but I think he really let himself down against Miller, and I think Miller's tactics were also a bit of a factor in that. He basically just bulldozed and steamrolled through Washington. Washington, the lack of power, I think, also really helped. Miller just walked through anything he had. He was getting caught with regularity, but Miller was, he's basically just like, fuck it, can't be bothered, walk through him and take him out, and he did. So, well done to Jarrell Miller. What I do think he needs to cut down maybe 30 pounds, come in maybe 260, 265. He's naturally a heavy guy, sorry. So, I think him at 260 is or 260 or 270 is a real problem for anyone at heavyweight. I think Tyson Fury, if he was still active, would probably dance around Jarrell Miller. But I think even, AJ would have a problem with him. Deontay Wilder would have a problem with him. Luis Ortiz, the age is catching up with him. He would have a problem with Miller. And I think, I'm not saying Miller beats all of them, because I'm definitely not saying that. But I think he gives them all problems in one way or another, because he's shown no durability concerns. He's definitely, obviously, come from a very tough sport in kickboxing as well. I think he's only lost to Mirko Cro Cop, who, he's known as a fierce sort of competitor at heavyweight. And I think, the MMA fans would know Mirko Cro Cop. He's a decent operator. I think his only losses to him as a kickboxer. So, he didn't get knocked out either. And he's got really, he looks really durable. So he's a problem for anyone. He showed a pretty decent gas tank as well. I think the snap was probably not in his punches towards the later rounds, but I think definitely he can keep up the work rate and he can overwhelm you. He overwhelmed Washington, I think, and Washington just broke. His spirit just broke. I think Jarrell Miller just, he was a bit too young, too hungry. And Miller, Washington just really could not cope with it and just basically gave in. So good win for Miller. Uh, Probably leaves just as many questions as answers, but I do think he can give problems if he can get down into a bit more of an athletic shape, I guess, if that's the correct sort of phrase. But if he does cut a bit more weight, he'll have a bit more snap in his punches in the later rounds, and I think he'll be able to keep up that work rate for sure. If he wants to bulldoze people, he can, and he does look like a real handful. So yeah, Washington, 35 now. He's probably coming towards the tail end of his career. He's obviously had he's had a loss at world title level to Deontay Wilder, and now he's lost to Jarrell Miller, who's probably a prospect more than anything. And it was kind of do or die for Washington. I think, I'm not saying Washington should retire, but I do think he should take a step back and reassess his options because he's 35 now. I know he does train with Vladimir Klitschko and those sort of guys, but he has one style and he doesn't really adapt. Let's put it that way. He tries to box, but he's a poor man's boxer in terms of he tries to box, but he gets caught. He gets caught on the ropes, and he's very very. He tries to be a lot cuter than what he is, although he can be slick at times. But I just think he's going to struggle against any sort of decent opponent. Or any noted opponent. Dillian White or Tony Bellew or someone like that. Just those are just some UK names, but other guys, even Artur Spilka, probably he would struggle against because Spilka's very awkward. But yeah, best of luck to Washington. He seems like a decent bloke, but I just think against the top level guys, he's always gonna fall slightly short. Victor Ortiz for Sal Corral. Hope I got that name right, or Corral. Yeah, so Ortiz says he's back. Let's see how far he goes. Not much more to add on Victor Ortiz. Looked okay, didn't look fantastic, but we will never know because it's against a journeyman. It was against an opponent he's supposed to win against. So yeah, let's see where Victor goes, especially after the recent losses he's had. So let's see if he stays active as well. Katie Taylor looked very good, very impressive. I know some people, bring up her versus Natasha Jonas, and I think Katie Taylor would beat her up. I'll be honest. I'm not keen on. I wouldn't say I'm keen on winning women's boxing. I'll keep my opinion, you know, slightly to the door, I guess, on that one. But as in, I don't know much about it, so I can't really comment too much on it. But from what I've seen, I do think Katie Taylor will probably be a bit too much for Natasha Jonas, and that's kind of just my opinion on that. And big congrats to Nicola Adams. Actually, she's on. She's in a TV advert, so yeah, congratulations to her. But yeah, Katie Taylor, I think, looked very good. She stopped an opponent who had previously never been stopped. So yeah, she picked the punches very well. She looked very athletic, quick. The hand speed was there. She moved around. She moved into range, in and out of range where she needed to, and yeah, she looked very smooth in there. And yeah, I think if she ever did face Jonas, I think she'd be a bit too much for her. But she's got to keep improving. She's probably going to have a world title fight in the next fight or two, and it's good to get some exposure out in the States. So yeah, best of luck to Katie Taylor. She's going from strength to strength. She's definitely, she's definitely a very interesting watch because she's better than some male boxers, and her skills are phenomenal. So yeah, shout out. Bit of news. Mayweather vs McGregor is on Sky pay-per-view over here in the UK. I think it'll be £20. They haven't released the price yet, so probably 20 quid. Let me know if you guys are going to be paying for that, but I definitely won't because I probably won't be awake. But we'll see. Probably stream it or something like that. Gervonta Davis, that is, versus Rocky Martinez, possible. I know he's the co-main event. And yeah, Rocky Martinez, who Lomachenko beat to get his WBO belt, that's a possibility. Last I heard, Rocky Martinez was struggling to make 130, so be very surprised if he, faces Davis. But not the worst fight. But I'd expect Davis to pretty much just run through him and get a stoppage, I guess. Rocky Martinez has been in a few wars, so coming towards the end of his career, I guess. And lastly, Dillian White is on the Crawford Indongo undercard, August 19th. Was supposed to face Michael Grant. Now he hasn't really got an opponent, and he's actually been on Twitter active and on Instagram and that sort of stuff. Trying to get Eddie to get him a fight. I think he Instagram lived him or something like that and said, "While you're out in the States, please get me a fight." So yeah, hopefully Dillian gets a fight, and it's a noteworthy fight. But I guess the main thing is he gets some decent exposure out there. I think he's mandatory for the European title from an interview I was listening to, so that's a possibility. If not, obviously the other champions are there, bar Joshua, so it's Parker and Deontay Wilder. There's obviously talks Wilder's going to face Ortiz next, but we don't know anything. We don't know anything new, I guess. As I said, Dillian White is still work in progress. He's still, he's still he hasn't. He's not the best boxer, I don't think, but he definitely gives it 100%. He has a good chin, and gives it his all. He comes to fight. So let's see who he's going to face. And as I said, it's good to get some eyes on you in the States rather than just in the UK. So best of luck to Dillian. If he sees this video, hopefully he doesn't punch me in the face. But because I said he doesn't have the best boxing skills. But yeah, I digress. Best of luck to Dillian, and obviously he's on sort of a UK-based card because Eddie Hearn has some rights on Indongo from the last Ricky Burns fight. So yeah, they've obviously been talking other stuff. Ohara Davis is coming back in a few weeks in September in Liverpool. So yeah, that's some other news, and there's various other bits and pieces. But for me, it's not really meaningful to kind of cover. And yeah, that's kind of me done on all the fights and all the news as of the 1st of August, I think it is today. So that's kind of all the stuff that I've managed to trudge out and dig out and discuss. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. And I just want to say one thing. I know this is going to sound like a mini rant at the end, and people might not think so. If you don't want to hear this mini rant, shut it off here on the 23-minute mark. And yeah, but some people obviously, you're on other people's channel on YouTube for whatever reason, whether or not it's to help the other person out or just to do a collaboration. And I've done a few. Shout out to the people who've willingly let me come on a channel and not just boost myself, but discuss the boxing. It's always good to meet new people and that sort of stuff. So I obviously released a series of tweets, and you get people who are very negative. I think people in the YouTube community are very, very negative. And I think, for me personally, I don't really take it to heart. I'm a very thick-skinned individual, and it doesn't really bother me. But when you are saying silly comments and that sort of stuff, obviously I do this because I enjoy it, and I'm not going to let someone, talk some nonsense on the channel. If you do talk nonsense, you can just fucking piss off, to be honest. I don't give a fuck. And yeah, that's just it. You should just people just need to be positive and let people do what they want to do. And I think that works in every walk of life, not just YouTube. But I think in YouTube, people just always find faults in others. And if you have a problem or you have a problem with me, then that's fine. Don't watch the videos. There's no point. I prefer people not to watch the videos if you don't like the content, or you don't like me, or you don't like my voice. I know I don't have the best voice, but there's nothing else I can do about that, to be honest. So yeah, I just wanted to say, basically, fuck the haters. You're all fucking scum. like people who hate on others for no reason whatsoever. So yeah, fuck you, and yeah, that's all. And all the positive people, all the people that support, shout out you guys. You guys are legends. I think you know you guys know who you are, and I always appreciate the support. It's I do it because I enjoy it, and if I can help someone else learn about boxing, then I've done something good, and I've done, you know, I've at least helped someone. One person is more than enough. But to all the negative people, you can, you don't need to watch my stuff, and I don't need you on the channel either. So yeah, that's it. And mini rant over. So I just want to get that out there because I thought it was necessary. So yeah, I don't really have anything more to say. Sorry for that in advance, and yeah, just do all the good stuff. Subscribe, share, like, all of that stuff, and yeah, speak soon. Take care. Peace.